Right now, there is a good chance you are carrying a quiet, heavy dread in your chest. You know the feeling, the sudden tightening of the throat, the shallow breath, the relentless racing loop of what-ifs playing out in your mind at 2 a.m. Society has handed you a very specific script for this feeling. The modern world tells you that this anxiety is a glitch, a biological malfunction, a misfiring of neurons, a disease to be medicated, managed, or meditated away. We treat anxiety like a check engine light, signaling that something inside of you is fundamentally broken. But what if the entire modern psychological paradigm is looking at this upside down? What if your anxiety isn't a symptom of your brokenness, but the ultimate, undeniable proof of your immense, terrifying power? In 1844, a Danish philosopher named Søren Kierkegaard wrote a sentence that possesses the power to completely shatter how you view your own mind. He wrote, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." If you truly understand what Kierkegaard meant by those 6 words, you will never experience a panic attack, a bout of overthinking, or a quarter-life crisis the same way again. Kierkegaard didn't see anxiety as a medical condition. He saw it as an existential feature of being a conscious human. Today, we are going to dive into the deep, uncomfortable, and ultimately liberating truth about why you are anxious. We are going to deconstruct the hidden architecture of your dread. And most importantly, we are going to explore how to transform this paralyzing vertigo into the most empowering force in your life. Welcome to the abyss. Let's look down. Act I. The edge of the cliff. To understand the dizziness of freedom, we have to start with Kierkegaard's most famous metaphor. I want you to imagine right now that you are standing on the edge of a massive, towering cliff. 1,000-foot drop into the ocean below. When you walk up to the edge and look down, you feel a sudden, violent rush of fear. But Kierkegaard asks us to look closer at the anatomy of that fear. Why exactly are you afraid? Your immediate answer is probably, "I am afraid of falling." You are afraid the rock might give way, or a gust of wind might push you over. That is a biological, rational fear of an external threat. But Kierkegaard points out a second, much darker, much deeper terror hiding beneath the first one. When you look down into the abyss, you realize that there is no physical barrier stopping you from jumping. Your arms and legs are completely under your control. At any second, if you simply chose to, you could throw yourself off the edge. The terror you feel isn't just the fear of falling. It is the terrifying realization of your own absolute freedom. It is the realization that your life is entirely in your own hands, and you are capable of doing something irreversible. That is vertigo. That is the dizziness of freedom. It is the sudden, crushing weight of realizing that you are the sole author of your fate. Now, take that cliff and apply it to your everyday life. You don't live on the edge of a physical cliff, but you live on the edge of thousands of psychological and existential cliffs every single day. You have the freedom to quit your job tomorrow morning. You have the freedom to pack a bag, drive to the airport, and start a new life in Tokyo. You have the freedom to end a 10-year relationship tonight with a single conversation. You have the freedom to completely reinvent your personality, your beliefs, and your future. You are completely, radically free. And that freedom is absolutely terrifying. When you feel anxious sitting at your desk or lying in bed, you aren't sick. You are feeling the vertigo of your own potential. You are feeling the weight of the infinite choices stretching out before you. Anxiety is the friction between your current reality and the infinite number of parallel lives you could be living. Act II. The burden of modernity of anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. It perfectly explains why the modern world is experiencing an epidemic of mental distress that dwarfs anything in human history. Imagine a peasant living in a European village in the year 1500. Their life was incredibly hard, plagued by disease, famine, and brutal labor. But philosophically, their life was incredibly simple. If you were a blacksmith's son, you were going to be a blacksmith. You were going to marry the baker's daughter. You were going to go to the village church every Sunday, hold the exact same religious beliefs as your neighbors, and you would eventually be buried in the same soil you worked your entire life. That peasant had no freedom. Therefore, according to Kierkegaard, they had very little existential anxiety. The script was written. There was no cliff to stand on, no abyss to look down into. Now look at you. You have been born into the most liberated era in the history of the human race. You can live anywhere. You can be anything. You can worship any god or no god. Through the glowing glass rectangle in your pocket, you have access to every piece of human knowledge, and you can communicate with billions of potential romantic partners, employers, and friends. We thought that absolute freedom would bring us absolute happiness, but we forgot about the vertigo. With infinite choices comes the infinite burden of making the right choice. Every time you choose a career path, you are simultaneously murdering 100 other potential lives you could have lived. If you choose to be an accountant in Chicago, you are killing the version of you that is a surf instructor in Bali, the version that is a novelist in Paris, and the version that is an entrepreneur in Tokyo. This is why modern dating apps are a psychological nightmare. When you have 3 people to choose from in your village, you commit and build a life. When you have 3 million people to swipe through, every single swipe is haunted by the ghost of, what if there's someone better? We are paralyzed by potential. The modern mental health crisis isn't just a crisis of brain chemistry. It is a crisis of meaning and choice. We are standing on the edge of the highest cliff humanity has ever built, staring into the deepest abyss of infinite possibility, and we are absolutely dizzy. Act III, the architecture of avoidance. So, what do we do when the dizziness becomes too much? What do we do when the terror of absolute freedom threatens to crush us? We try to give our freedom away. Kierkegaard observed that the vast majority of people spend their entire lives desperately trying to escape their own freedom. Because if you are free, you are responsible. If your life is miserable and you are radically free, you have no one to blame but yourself. That is a deeply uncomfortable truth to swallow. To avoid this, we build elaborate psychological prisons for ourselves, lock the door from the inside, and hand the key to someone else. We adopt what philosophers call bad faith. Think about how this manifests in your own life. We escape our freedom by conforming strictly to societal expectations. We take the safe corporate job, buy the standard house in the suburbs, and buy the clothes the algorithm tells us to buy, not because we deeply want to, but because doing what everyone else is doing relieves the burden of having to choose for ourselves. We let society make the choice. We escape our freedom through distraction. We numb the existential dread by scrolling through short-form videos for 4 hours a day, binge-watching television, or consuming substances. We drown out the silence because in the silence the reality of our freedom echoes loudest. We even escape our freedom by pathologizing our own minds. There is a strange, dark comfort in saying, I can't change my life, I can't take that risk because I have an anxiety disorder. By labeling it purely as a medical defect, we strip ourselves of our agency. We say, it's not my fault, it's my brain chemistry. While clinical interventions are deeply necessary for severe cases, for the vast majority of us, hiding behind the label of anxious is a way of dodging the terrifying responsibility of taking action. Kierkegaard called this state of living the aesthetic stage. The aesthetic life is a life of drifting. It's a life of chasing temporary pleasures, avoiding pain, and refusing to make definitive, life-altering commitments. The aesthetic person is a spectator to their own existence, floating from one distraction to the next, forever trying to outrun the dizziness. But you can't outrun it forever. Eventually, the distractions stop working. The scroll gets boring. The purchases feel empty. The hangover hurts too much. And you are forced once again to stand on the edge of the cliff. Act IV. The leap of faith. If numbing the anxiety doesn't work and running from the freedom doesn't work, what is the solution? How do we cure the dizziness? Kierkegaard's answer is profound. You don't cure the dizziness. You use it. Anxiety is not an enemy to be defeated. It is a compass to be followed. If anxiety is the dizziness of freedom, then the things that make you the most anxious are exactly the things that contain your greatest potential for freedom and growth. Think about the moments in your life when you felt the most intense, stomach-churning anxiety. Right before you leaned in to kiss someone you deeply loved for the first time. The moment before you walked onto a stage to speak. The day you clicked publish on a piece of art you poured your soul into. The hour before you finally quit a toxic job to start your own business. That wasn't sickness. That was the raw, electric vibration of your soul expanding. That was you standing on the cliff, realizing you had wings and preparing to jump. To overcome the paralysis of the aesthetic life, Kierkegaard says we must move into the ethical stage. The ethical life is defined by one word: commitment. In a world of infinite choices, the only way to find meaning is to voluntarily bind yourself to something finite. You must look at the infinite menu of life, feel the dizziness of all the options, and bravely say, I choose this, and I renounce the rest. You choose one career path and commit to mastering it. You choose one partner and commit to building a deeply flawed, beautifully real life with them. You choose a set of values and commit to living them out, even when it costs you something. Commitment acts as gravity. It grounds you. It takes the terrifying, infinite space of your potential and focuses it into a single, piercing beam of reality. But making that commitment requires what Kierkegaard famously called the leap of faith. You will never have enough information to guarantee that your choice is the perfect one. You will never know for sure if the person you marry is the absolute best match out of 8 billion people. You will never know if your business idea will succeed. Reason and logic can only take you to the edge of the cliff. To actually fly, you have to leap into the unknown, trusting that the act of commitment itself is what creates the meaning. Act V, transforming dread into power. Philosophy is useless if it only lives in the realm of theory. Let's make this highly practical. How do you take Kierkegaard's profound realization and apply it to the panic in your chest right now? When the anxiety hits, when the overthinking loops begin, you must undergo a cognitive shift. You must stop trying to shrink yourself and start expanding into the dread. 1. Depathologize the feeling. The moment you feel your chest tighten, stop telling yourself, I am having an anxiety attack or something is wrong with me. Verbally reframe it. Tell yourself, I am experiencing the dizziness of my own freedom. This energy in my body is proof that I am facing a moment of absolute potential. Change the label and you change the biological response. 2. Locate the hidden choice. Anxiety rarely exists in a vacuum. It is almost always attached to an unmade decision or an avoided truth. Ask yourself, what freedom am I currently avoiding? Are you staying in a relationship you know is over? Are you avoiding a difficult conversation? Are you hiding from a creative calling? Locate the exact cliff you are refusing to look down from. 3. Embrace the cost of the alternative. We freeze because we are afraid of making the wrong choice. But not choosing is a choice. If you are anxious about quitting your job to write a book, visualize the terror of the alternative, sitting at the exact same desk in 10 years, haunted by the ghost of the book you never wrote. Use the fear of an unlived life to overcome the fear of the unknown. 4. Commit to the finite. Select one definitive action. It doesn't have to be the final answer, but it must be concrete. If you are paralyzed by career options, pick one, commit to it for 6 months without looking back, and execute. The moment you move from the infinite realm of thought into the finite realm of action, the dizziness instantly begins to fade. The ultimate realization, if you absorb nothing else from this, remember this. A life entirely free of anxiety is not a human life. It is the life of a stone, or a machine, or an animal acting purely on instinct. To be human is to be caught between the mud and the divine. You are a biological creature rooted to the earth, but you possess a mind capable of contemplating eternity, infinity, and absolute freedom. The friction between those two states is what we call anxiety. Do not run from it. Do not drug it into silence the moment it appears. Do not let society convince you that you are fundamentally broken because you feel the immense weight of your own existence. Your anxiety is the price of admission for a conscious life. It is the shadow cast by your own brilliance. The next time you find yourself standing on the edge of the cliff, looking down into the terrifying, dizzying abyss of your own potential, do not step back. Do not look for a distraction. Do not ask someone else to push you. Look straight into the terrifying void of your freedom. Feel the vertigo. Let it shake you to your very core. And then, leap.